Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome to episode 5 of Pain to Joy. I'm Danielle Suddy, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to listen and to be here with me and to be present. And so before we begin, I'm going to close my eyes and place my hand on my heart. I'm going to take a deep belly breath in. And I'm going to shake off all that no longer serves and perhaps never did. Another deep breath with a smile, and I am ready to begin. I had actually begun recording what I thought would be episode 5 last night, and I was a bit too tired, and I said, nope, you need to go to bed. And a few moments ago, I caught a clip of Reynolds speaking with Hugh Jackman, so two actors talking to each other about anxiety, and it was really beautiful. Not because it's two famous people talking about anxiety, but because it's two men speaking publicly about anxiety, which is brave and beautiful and can be so helpful to so many others. And may we all be brave and beautiful and feel safe to share in safe spaces with safe people about our anxieties, about the stories that are going on in our minds, that are holding us back, that are stressing us out. And a few things came out of that conversation. Ryan was speaking about how his anxiety actually serves him as a director and an actor, because he's always thinking ahead about how he can make something better and what about this and what about that. But he also spoke to how it is a gift because now he can recognize that anxiety when he sees it in his children. And key things that he said were, when I see it in my children, I can recognize it. And I can also know that I can't fix it. And that's something that's really, really been true for me these last few years, learning how to feel my feelings more deeply and learning that when someone's sharing their pain, their suffering, something challenging, there's nothing to fix, there's nothing to change. The way to heal is to feel. The way to heal is through. And so to watch this man talk about how he can recognize anxiety in his children and help them navigate it and help them feel it and talk it out with them was so beautiful. And Hugh Jackman shared that he hasn't always been cognizant of the fact that when he's thinking about something else, like he has a big job coming up, like hosting the Oscars, for example, and the 3 weeks prior to that, he is more in his head. He's thinking about that. He's focused. Well, in the past, he didn't say to his children, hey, dad's focused on this, and so if I seem a bit off, or if I'm not 100% present, for example, those are not his words, but the idea being that if he's not fully focused and in the moment and he seems a bit distracted, that it's because he has this big gig coming up. But in the past, he didn't share that with his children. And now he takes the opportunity to share that, because if we don't tell our children, if we don't tell our partners, our lovers, our friends, our colleagues, maybe even our boss, whoever, that we might have something going on in our head that could be distracting us from the present moment or could be distracting us from being fully present with this other person when we are with them, then that other person might be feeling a certain type of way. And that's happened to me often where I've been around someone and they are thinking about something else, they are preoccupied with something else, and rightly so, something is stressful in their life, they're concerned about something, but it's such a gift when that person can say, hey, I'm a bit off today. Hey, I'm really distracted by this. And then we can realize and recognize that this behavior, this distraction has nothing to do with us. Because I'm somebody, until a few years ago, if somebody was a bit off, if somebody wasn't fully themselves, my first go-to was, I must have done something wrong. What did I do? How can I help? And I know that that comes from things that happened when I was younger, for example, and I've been healing through that. And so now when someone's energy is a bit off, my first instinct is not to assume or think that I did anything wrong. And that has come from my practices of self-compassion, my practices of unlearning ways of being that I've learned since I was a small child. And I just really appreciated this conversation with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman because they were modeling how to be with their children, how to be with other people in their lives. And Hugh Jackman recalled a phone call, and he said to his son, oh, I'm really nervous about making this phone call. And then he made the phone call, and afterwards the son had asked him, hey, Dad, how did the phone call go? Because then we're also allowing, whether it's children, whether it's friends, partners, etc., we're also allowing other people to be there for us. And we're also allowing other people, we're allowing them to see us be human. And I think when we're little kids, we look up to our teachers and our parents and our family members and other important members of the village that is raising us. But we see them as these adult figures, maybe these perfect people. We don't realize that they're human. And it's really valuable to let the children know around you, to let any human know around you that you are human. I was on a call the other day. It was a counseling call. And this call was set up by my doctor, who I've been seeing since I was 12. And I had mentioned to her on a call back in March that I was struggling with grief, as both my grandparents passed away within 3 weeks of each other early this year. And I mentioned that I was trying to get into a counselor, and I searched and searched and searched. And when I finally made a connection, unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it because I was out of the province that the practitioner was in, and I was quite frustrated. And so the doctor said, "Oh, is that something you would be interested in?" And I said, "Yes." And so when I came back to Calgary, she set me up. And the first time I was supposed to have the appointment, I was in a really good headspace and I canceled. And this past week, I had a friend come unexpectedly, which was incredible and wonderful. And I thought, oh, shoot, maybe I should cancel the appointment. But my instinct said, no, keep the appointment. And so I kept the appointment, and I mentioned to the counselor at the beginning of the call that the reason why this was set up was because I was moving through deep grief for the early part of this year. However, there was new information that I had received about these tenants that I've evicted and insurance, and I was moving through some big feelings on Wednesday morning and was very frustrated and thought, this is what I need to talk about. I also found out, well, he explained it. I guess the first call is supposed to be a meet and greet. But in my mind, I thought, well, I'm on the phone with this guy already. This stuff has come up for me, and I'm going to share. I'm going to take this opportunity, because I feel like these last few weeks, it has been opportunity after opportunity to express myself, that from challenging moments, I keep getting these opportunities. And so as I was sharing with this counselor, and closer to the end of the call, I said, oh, I guess you didn't expect all of this today. And I don't know if I apologized, but I said, oh, you probably weren't expecting all of this. And he said, well, actually, no. He said, I appreciate that everyone is at their own pace, but I appreciate this pace. And then he said some very beautiful, kind things that I allowed myself to receive. And he was saying, thank you for being human and authentic and vulnerable and raw. And of course, I'm thinking, well, I finally have you on the phone. I have this opportunity. I want to take this opportunity to heal. And I did have a very deep breakdown that had to do with insurance and had to do with some of the unpleasantries that transpired during the court case I was in for 9-10 years from a car accident I was in 2010. And I won't get into it deeply because I believe in sharing from the scar, not from the wound. I heard that once on the One Giant Mind app for meditation, which is amazing. And there was this quote to share from the scar, not from the wound. But I will say that I'm so glad that I trusted my instincts to have this call on Wednesday morning and to trust that my friend would be okay and she would get off to the airport okay, and that it was important for me to have this call, because I really did move through some really inhumane parts of that process of being in litigation for a car accident. And the short of it is, I know that at some point I'm going to want to, and I have wanted to, change that system, because it's very inhumane. The focus, if you've been injured, minor injuries, severe injuries, should be your health and your well-being and getting stronger. But once you enter into the insurance game and seek compensation, and rightfully so, it just becomes very, very antagonistic and unpleasant. And what ended up surfacing for me, and what the counselor was referring to, is that I was sharing feelings that I was having around these tenants that I've evicted and still finding things that are broken, etc., and really having the desire to let it go, because one of my favorite quotes is, how well did you live? How well did you love? And how well did you learn to let go? That being said, I'm aware enough of my own self and my own feelings to know that I don't want to let it go before I'm ready to. And at the same time, I'm so glad I kept that appointment, because I said I was meant to speak about this grief that I experienced and that I still experience, but that was at the height in, January, February, March, maybe into April. But today, I think it's important for me to share about this. And what I recognized was, and I'm going to say that this is the win, I celebrate that I recognized that as much as I've been dealing with it powerfully, and as much as I've been mindful of breathing and doing my best to continue to focus on my health and my wellness, it has been stressful to deal with this situation as it has gone on. And because things had come to a head where I found out some information that the property management company had dropped the ball even more than I thought, which is leaving me not in the best place moving forward. And I had been waiting on this information for weeks. So I think it just all kind of came crumbling down on Wednesday morning. But how perfect that I got information, and then by 10:30 that morning, I was having this appointment. And during the appointment with this counselor, at one point, he would ask me, like, how are you feeling? And so I was going deeper into what my feelings were and what I was feeling. I at one point expressed that I want to allow myself to be human, because I think this is something that I've only started to allow myself in the last few years to understand what that means. And for me, allowing myself to be human is allowing myself to feel, allowing myself to not have it all figured out, because I don't think we ever do have it all figured out, and allowing it to be okay to not be okay. And so I'm really, really thankful that I was on the call with this gentleman. I have this sort of breakthrough around some painful things that had happened during the court case that I didn't even know were sort of still there somewhere living inside of me, painful things. And having him reflect back to me that he appreciated me being human, but what he also said was, may you continue to be human. Like, don't forget, right? This idea of don't forget to keep being human. Because, and I'm feeling emotional about it now, it's in the moments where I'm on my own doing inner work, unlearning ways of being, learning new ways of being, on a call with this counselor who I didn't know from a hole in the ground, but I thought, he's here, he's a safe space. And so as I was feeling my feelings, which often I do on my own or sometimes with a close friend who can hold space, I just kept letting myself go deeper and deeper into being human. Now I understand that I'm not going to do that in all of the environments that I'm in. I understand that it's important to do that in safe spaces. It's also important to do it if you're with a friend or someone you care about that has the capacity, asking, do you have the capacity to hold space for some big feelings I'm having? Do you have the capacity for some stressful things that I'm experiencing? So I'm not saying that I need to be that fully human everywhere I go and burst into tears and have a big breakthrough. But I also think if we could all be a little more human, the world would be a lighter, brighter place. I know the other day, the day that I had that breakthrough, that day that I had some stressful moments, I do not believe that the whole day is bad or that the whole day is stressful, because there were stressful moments. It was particularly tiring. I don't like to say the word. However, that evening I popped into the Shoppers Drug Mart and I mentioned to the lady working there that because I've lost some eyelashes, like a whole chunk in the middle of my right eye, which I believe in large part is due to stress from my beautiful, beautiful grandparents passing earlier this year, I was going on a date and I said, maybe I should get some lip gloss. Maybe that'll distract from the fact that I'm missing some eyelashes, because I met this person through online dating and I don't want to misrepresent myself as somebody who, has these full eyelashes in the photos. And I was sort of just joking about it. But because I spoke with her about that, she ended up sharing some things about her life. And then I ended up sharing some things. And then I was able to share about my podcast. And she was able to share that she has been through some difficult injuries. And so we had this connection. And I believe that we can create connection wherever we are. I understand that sometimes I can probably be a TMI, too much information oversharer, but I'm also learning that sometimes you just need to connect. And when I went into that Shoppers, I was just being honest, I'm missing eyelashes. This is why. This is what's happening. She got on board. She's excited to hear how the date went. It was great, by the way. And so I just feel as though this idea of continuing to be human is something that I am dedicated to, that I am intentional about. And what has helped me with that is self-compassion. And I know that I started to speak about my self-compassion journey in the last couple of episodes. And last week shared about how that began with Kristen Neff and Brene Brown in an online course that unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. And then I saw Kristen Neff and Christopher Germer in The Real in Vancouver for a workshop. And I wanted to share a little bit about what that can look like. And so when we are in these difficult moments, when we are in these moments where we are noticing that we are being self-critical, the first thing is to be mindful. Be mindful of the fact that maybe you're not speaking to yourself kindly or that you're being hard on yourself. I know that definitely tough love is a thing that people talk about, but what I know to be true is tough love doesn't work, because being hard on yourself and being hard on yourself and being hard on yourself, from what I've seen and what I've seen in research, that doesn't create the results that we are striving for, but self-compassion does. And so that first piece is, can you just be mindful of the fact that you might be being self-critical? Or can you be mindful that you're having a challenging moment? And instead of being critical to yourself, this idea of switching it to being kind to yourself. Now, that happens over time. And I did put up Kristen Neff's website on the podcast notes. She has tons of exercises that you can move through. And these take time. These take time to practice and re-practice. But an easy place to start when you feel like you might not be being very kind to yourself is you can stop, you can be mindful. So in this moment, am I being kind to myself? And if you've already stopped, the answer is perhaps no. And then you can say, how would I speak to a best friend in this moment? How would I speak to a small child in this moment? How would I speak to someone I love in this moment? And that sort of triggers your brain to start thinking about treating yourself more kindly. So when these moments of self-criticism arise, and we have tons of them throughout the day, but can we stop and be mindful that it's happening? And can we extend some kindness to ourselves? And another piece of self-compassion is common humanity. So sometimes when things happen to us, which by the way, I don't believe. I believe things happen for us, because every time something happens in our life, the smallest thing to the biggest thing, I believe we always have an opportunity to choose to learn from it, to grow from it, to ask questions, to evolve. But this idea of common humanity is when something happens in our lives, often when it's stressful or, anxiety ridden, we feel alone. We feel like, well, I'm the only one. I'm the only one that's ever felt this. I'm the only one this has ever happened to. And the idea of common humanity, the way I understand it, is to stop and remind yourself after you've been mindful, you're being kind to yourself, and maybe I'm getting the order wrong, but let's just go with it, to remind yourself that you aren't the only one, that other people, and I'm going to gauge to say most people, are experiencing, I don't love the word suffering, but experiencing some sort of suffering, are experiencing some sort of pain. Now, obviously, there are varying levels of that, and some of it excruciatingly heartbreaking with things that are going on in the world right now. And at the same time, whatever you are experiencing is valid. I think that was a big piece for me, is that for so long in my life, when something would happen, I would just automatically go, well, it's fine, everything will be okay, it's not that big of a deal. But when we take all those little things and add them up, or maybe little things and big things, and we just say, it's fine, it's okay, I'm fine, I'll be fine. Sure, you will be fine. However, if you just suppress the feelings of these things that have happened, that were stressful, that were difficult, that created anxiety, that created pain, and you just push them down, and you don't express them and you don't feel them, what do you think happens to them? They live somewhere in your body, And I say that as someone who has done different modalities of healing, including somatic breath work, including even when I was on the phone call with the counselor on Wednesday. I mean, I'm feeling a little bit better now, but when I brought up this excruciatingly painful situation that was so inhumane, and I don't think I fully went there, so I apologize for the confusion. It was me unraveling and speaking to and having deep emotions while speaking to the counselor about how inhumane the insurance process can be when you're dealing with people who have been in car accidents, because it is this antagonistic environment of us against them. It's an icky feeling, and ultimately it's so inhumane because we should be thinking about each other as human beings. We should be thinking about each other as bright lights that we are, capable of healing, capable of getting stronger and getting better. And I'm not mad at it in this moment because it just is. It is what it is. But one of the reasons that my brain is still healing at the level that it is, and that the migraines are what they are, and my PAIN levels can be what they are, is in part because of the experience of going through that court case, of the physical testing and the psychological testing and the pushing myself. And even though I learned not to push myself so hard, that still pushed me over the edge. That still made my symptoms and my pain experiences worse. And it shouldn't be like that. I know that I will probably at some point change the system. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but the system should not be one insurance company against another insurance company. The stress, the fear, the economic implications it has on people. There were just a lot of things that I experienced. It shouldn't be like that. You should have a panel of 3 experts who look at the person and say, okay, yes, this is what you've experienced, this is what you've gone through, this is your prognosis moving forward, and this is the compensation you should receive. I'm not saying it all has to be butterflies and rainbows and unicorns and magical, but it's just so, I don't even have a word for it. But the reason I was sharing is because the other day on that call with the counselor, when I sort of broke down and had these deep, intense emotions around these inhumane moments that I experienced, my entire back got like tight and seized up. I was very tuckered out afterwards. I feel looser today. However, and that was 2 days ago. Yeah, it's not something that I feel anyone should have to move through. And I know there are tons and tons of people moving through it right now. And I'm holding so much loving space for all of you, for anything and everything that you're going through. And what I would want for you is that if you're going through any sort of painful process, if you're going through any sort of moment of stress or anxiety, that you can begin to be mindful of it, to be kind to yourself, to say to yourself, hey, how would you treat a best friend in this moment? How would you treat someone you really love in this moment? Because it ain't that, often the way we're talking to ourselves, the way we treat ourselves over and over and over again. And what I want is for us to show up for ourselves over and over and over again in kind and loving ways, because I know I learned how to do that. And because I've learned how to do that, life is a lot lighter and more beautiful. And being kind to myself, oh gosh, it just feels good. And like I mentioned in previous episodes, we spend the most time with ourselves. We spend the most time with ourselves. So may we learn how to be kind and loving to ourselves. And I was just refreshing a bit on some Kristen Neff videos. And what she was mentioning was when we learn to practice self-compassion, when we can be more mindful and more kind to ourselves, the more you practice. And again, it is a practice, and I invite you to go to her website and check out the different exercises and see what resonates and what doesn't, and really just take the time to maybe learn a little bit more about what self-compassion can look like for you in your life. But what she was saying was that when people practice self-compassion, they are more resilient, they have better coping skills, they have more self-confidence and more motivation. And if those aren't 4 reasons to get out there right now and buy a Kristen Neff book, to go buy Chris Germer's book, to check them out on YouTube, find their websites that I will attach in the episode notes. I mean, I just think the world would be a much better place if we could be more kind to ourselves. And when we learn to be more kind and loving to ourselves, we can be more kind and loving with others. We can be more patient with others. If you're kind to yourself one time, that has ripple effects. I'm all about these ripple effects because I know that being kind to ourselves allows us to be more kind to others. And then when you're kind to someone else, maybe they can learn to be kind to themselves, and so on and so forth. And I believe that we are on this earth to love and be loved. But ultimately, the biggest gift we can give to ourselves and others is to learn how to love ourselves. And this relates back to what I was saying earlier about Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman having that conversation. Because at the end of the clip that I saw, Ryan Reynolds says, we have more losses than wins. And I know that when I'm sharing here, and the kind of sharing I often do publicly, I'm often sharing about my wins because I do love myself and I do practice self-compassion and I am resilient and I love myself. But it is very true. We do have more losses than wins. So can we learn to be kind and loving to ourselves through these losses? And I think what's actually funny, as I said that, I recognize and I realize that even though I can move through something difficult or challenging, I still see it as a win. Because even when something extremely challenging can happen, well, I can learn from it. I can grow from it. I can take something from that and do better next time. So I don't even know that I see them as losses. Yes, in the moment, and yes, feel through it. I know Gary Vaynerchuk, who I've followed for a long time and appreciate his content. Check it out. He will often put things up on social media about, learning to love losing. Learn to love losing. And I think that's so powerful because sometimes something doesn't work out for us or it doesn't work out in our favor. And we get so stuck on that, or we get into a victim mode of like, oh, poor me, it didn't work out for me. So I'm just going to sit in that pain or upsettedness or defeatedness for the rest of my life. Well, that's no way to live. And so I love that he says that. And you can have a visceral reaction from that. You might see something that says, learn to love losing. You go, well, I'm not a loser. I don't want to lose. No. But I think it's so powerful. It's so powerful to learn to love losing because, again, in my mind, I don't think we're ever losing because from every loss we gain and we learn better ways of being or how to do something differently next time. But absolutely, in life, if you line them all up, you might go, oh, well, that didn't work out and that didn't work out. And I also think that, for example, when something didn't work out, that is a blessing in disguise. So I'll give you an example. Say something, maybe you're on a dating app and you're writing someone and you're supposed to meet them and then all of a sudden they've deleted you or they've ghosted you, which, by the way, I'm not a ghoster, I'm not a deleter, I'm not a blocker. But instead of going, oh, well, that's too bad, I really wanted to meet that person, my first thought is rejection is protection. Obviously, if that person so easily can just delete you or block you or ghost you, well, then you dodged a bullet. So in a funny twist, my intention was to share that we have more losses than wins, and may we learn to love losing. However, I still see a loss as a win. So maybe the tone of every episode will always have a celebratory tone because of how strong my self-compassion game is, because of how strong my self-love game is. And that's not to say, I can tell you, a beautiful challenge has been diving into online dating again. I've had some really great experiences to say no to people in very kind ways and to honor myself in doing so. And that's huge for me. As a recovering people pleaser, to be able to say, nope, that's not for me, or to have conversations with people and really express what I want and what I need and to be heard in that, how freaking wonderful. And the beautiful challenge that I have had come up is connecting with someone more deeply and becoming acutely aware where I still have some insecurities that I didn't know were there, or where I am a secure attachment style person, but sometimes in new situations with men, for example, some insecurities can come up and it's fascinating. And as opposed to letting that get me down or letting me get all in my head, I'm like, okay, this is wonderful. It's wonderful if you didn't hear back from the person when you thought you might, or it's wonderful. How wonderful is it that the delay in your communication is allowing you to really breathe into these insecurities and really feel into them, because they have nothing to do with him. So it's been challenging to feel that come up, but it's been a beautiful gift to say to myself, okay, what is this about? This has nothing to do with the other person. What can I do to feel more secure? And I think it gives me opportunities to, again, speak up, express myself, ask for what I need. And these are just all incredible gifts of past losses that I've had, past not great dating experiences that I've had that are allowing me to make better and different choices now. And so as we all navigate this being human, may we listen to what that counselor said to me. May you continue to be more human. May you continue to allow yourself to be human, to stop yourself and be mindful in those moments where you're starting to be unkind to yourself. Stop yourself in those moments where you might start to create a story in your head that is based on assumptions and is not based on reality. May we allow ourselves to ask more questions to get more clarity so that maybe we don't go down a rabbit hole of anxiety. May we love ourselves more and more and learn to extend loving kindness and friendship to ourselves, love to ourselves the same way we would to a friend, a best friend, or someone that we love in our lives. But this is a practice. I have been practicing now for 7 years? 7 years maybe, or more. And it has been a beautiful journey and a beautiful ride. And I still have a lot more to learn. And I still have a lot more to go. And that's beautiful too, because it is a practice. And may we take that conversation from Reynolds and Hugh Jackman and allow moments where we are in struggle, where we are having challenges, and our children or our friends or our partners or our lovers are around us, and use that as a teachable moment for them and ourselves to say, oh, I'm having a tough time right now. I'm having a tough time. Maybe I'm going to just make a cup of tea and we can just sit here and relax. And you don't necessarily have to go into the deep, dark details, but I think there are ways of telling children that are age appropriate when we are moving through something so that they can understand that you are also human as a parent or an aunt or a grandparent, cousin. And sharing with people around you if you're moving through something difficult allows them to extend more kindness to you. It gives them an opportunity to be more kind and patient with you if they know that you're moving through something. And my hope for all of us is that we can continue to learn to be more kind to ourselves. We can continue to learn to be more loving to ourselves, and we can continue to express our needs with the people around us, with the people that we love, or in any given situation where it might merit you sharing how you're feeling in that moment so that things can be more loving and kind, so that the environment can be more safe for you to be in, for you to heal in. And that's what I would want for you, for me, for everyone. I want to thank you for being here today. I wanted to say I'm so excited that I figured out how to put this on Apple Podcasts. So all of the episodes are on there as well. So if you have an iPhone, that's an easy way to access. Something I've been learning is if you can follow, that helps me and that helps other people find it. And I will admit that when I was younger and in the last few years, I would sometimes think self-promotion was almost like self-indulgent. And I don't see it that way at all. And that is part of my self-love, self-compassion journey. But it's also because I'm doing something that I love. I'm doing something that has value for me and I hope has value for others. And it feels like an easy joy to share with people. I mentioned to the lovely lady at Shoppers Drug Mart the other day, I said, oh, and by the way, I just started a podcast. I've been mentioning it to everyone and anyone. So feel free to mention it to anyone and everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it. I am sending you a big, big hug. Hand on my heart, deep breath in, deep belly breath in. Exhaling all that no longer serves. Wishing you joy in your day and inviting you to be more and more kind with yourself, more and more loving with yourself. And feel free to let me know how it's going on Instagram, Danielle.Suddy on Facebook, or at dksuddy@yahoo.ca. Much love.